ways that schools are trying to help is the whole green movement that's going on. There's a group out in San Francisco, Berkeley, called Eco-Literacy that Zenobia runs. You've got green schools that are looking about how do you green your environments. You even have the famous chef out in Berkeley who has a health curriculum that she's working on with this eco-literacy group. But basically, how do we ensure that we don't have biodistress? Now, the interesting thing about this thing of altered bodies is the innovation can alter our bodies here too. So on your left-hand side, you hear of an Olympic athlete called Oscar Pistorius. Now, he's an Olympic athlete we have not heard of. He has 2 prosthetic legs called the cheetah flex feet. It's demonstrating that physical enhancement can create more than normal performance. So says the Olympic Committee. They would not let him participate in the Olympics because they felt he had an unfair advantage, his prosthetics. So suddenly, something that's been considered a handicap is considered an unfair advantage. When I used to work at Williams College, people thought that for kids who had learning disabilities, who got extra time on tests and other things, that's an unfair advantage. Suddenly, neurodiversity or physical disabilities become an asset in how we're innovating around them. The other picture shows this woman named Torley Linden, and she is actually this very prolific musician who resides in Second Life. She has Asperger's syndrome. It's a mild form of autism that I'm sure many of you know, and basically it decreases one's ability to read facial expressions. I couldn't tell if you were happy with me, mad at me, if you thought something was fun, but when you're in Second Life, you actually don't have to be able to interpret people's facial expressions. So is this now an advantage for her to be able to have this mechanism, and will her autism somehow work more prolifically online? So this is really an example of how our physical enhancements or innovations can support kind of this diversity. It's called neurodivergent diversity. It's where the neurological development is a normal human difference. It's how we're starting to treat these differences with autism. And there's a lot of innovation focused around this. So the question is, when does this innovation come into education? And when does this innovation with marginalized population become used for mainstream innovation? So a great example of this, something you guys are all familiar with, is we've had closed captioning in our lives on TV and videos for quite a long time now. It's built into our TVs, it's built into the code of the videos. Well, recently, the Department of Education funded Discovery Education to extend the core videos, something like over 17,000 videos, with closed captioning. They did this, however, not just for the hearing impaired children in our schools. They did this as a new way to work with English language learner students, so they can see the text that goes with the video. And you know, I am a terrible Spanish speaker, you know, I am Mexican-American, first generation, and so sometimes, you know, I'll watch, like, you know, I'll try to watch like a novella, a little soap opera, and I'll put on the closed caption to just try to kind of make sure I understand what's happening. So suddenly, you have an example of an innovation that was used, for, again, for a disability that's now being used for a different kind of population. And these are the questions you have to think about for your organizations. And this is really the big questions. How will innovations that have traditionally served those with a form of physical disability challenge and spark innovations that help mainstream populations? How can we ensure that there are more approaches and tools that support brain fitness are available and utilized? And what kind of products and services are available that can serve a bio-distressed population? So we're going to move to our next group, which is organizations. So we're moving out from self to organizations and thinking about how these altered bodies now might, quote-unquote, amplify organizations. So organizations, it basically accepts the fact, amplified organizations, that our young people have grown up adept at using technology and the social media tools that enable them to reach out and expand their social networks. It's like the Verizon commercial, you're only as good as your network. And how they receive and filter organized information through social bookmarking and tagging such as Delicious and Flickr, and how they use wikis to collaborate in their work. So the question becomes, with these enhanced capacity and collaboration skills these digital natives bring with them, what about when they step into these schools that don't recognize any of these tools that these students use? Amplified individuals want to be able to experiment and improvise solutions using social media and online collaboration and virtual environments as shared spaces for distributed teams. There's a book out there by Tom Tapscott called The Net Generation. Excellent book, I recommend it for everybody. And it really talks about basically everybody under 30, which does not count me, basically grew up with technology in their lives as easily as I grew up with television in my life. And more importantly, maybe my cousins, you know, who grew up with 3 televisions in their home, that kind of thing. So basically, this is the environment these folks are used to. And so they're requiring a different environment in which to work and how you can amplify this environment. So here are some characteristics of what amplified organizations might look like. First of all, amplified organizations will thrive in a world of social networks, information proliferation, and they'll be transparent and they'll be able to respond to rapid change. These are 4 core characteristics. And so the first one is transliteracy. Amplified organizations are capable of communicating across multimedia in ways that use specific media platforms and non-mediated face-to-face interactions to develop effective and creative messages. Think of online coaching. At New Tech, the coaches, they use IM, they use Skype, they use Uvu, they use iChat. They have Project Briefcase where all their projects are hosted. It's that kind of transliteracy that folks need. And then most importantly, this is a very key issue, is that these new amplified organizations have to show that they have open leadership and sociability. This is that bottom-up stuff I keep talking about. People will work around how you circulate resources openly and broadly through social networking, recognizing that information tends to find the right people at the right time, enabling ad hoc leaders to emerge and apply relevant expertise more quickly. So instead of depending on our top-down experts who can help us with this, we open up our leadership style to ensure that we can basically crowdsource our problems within our own organization for this new generation to be able to respond to. And then another characteristic of an amplified organization is collective sense-making, and that is the prevalence of an open, flexible structure that facilitates this collective sense-making, which basically collects all the knowledge and expertise that may have not been visible before. And then these organizations also reflect a culture of beta building. Because of the transparent processes, because of this kind of social and open leadership, and because of the use of distributive teams, or what we call smart mobs in our 2006 map, people are able to critique and help each other quickly, and so you have rapid innovation going on. You have this rapid prototyping, which is the beta building. And so the question becomes, how will schools become amplified organizations that embrace the new leadership structures and models of learning? But also, how do our organizations do that? So I had a young man that worked for me. He was very smart, and he basically kind of represented this net generation, right? And it just was not working out very well, right? I mean, KnowledgeWorks, in Cincinnati, Ohio, a little top-down, traditional organization. And this guy's from San Francisco, and he likes the bottom-up and the open leadership, and I should have access to the CEO, and I should be able to make all the decisions myself, and nobody should have to check my work, right? We've all felt it, right? So, I'm just like, I don't think this is a good fit. Then I read this article, like in Business Week one day, and it talked about how organizations have to change for Generation Y. And it was a lot about these 4 skills here. And it basically talked about how we were going to fail as organizations if we did not respond to this generation, and that we can't keep thinking, oh, those entitled little kids, they must work their way through the same kind of things I had to do, and they can't do these decisions themselves. So this has questions about schooling and about learning, but it also has questions on how you organize your own organization and how traditional or different it might be in terms of a bottom-up kind of situation.